Hello, BookTube. I've got some new arrivals for you here. They were unfortunately opened off camera, but they're still new books, new or forthcoming books, and that always makes me think of you. It always makes me think you should at least look at these things. You should know about them, and maybe we can talk about them a bit so that you know what's coming, so that you can plan and maybe put some of these things on a list for yourself or for somebody that you know. So I've got a few of them here. We'll just about half a dozen. We'll just go through them. They're all either coming out immediately or coming out early next year, something like that. And the first is a work of translation. I think we've seen this already. I think we saw part one. This is part two. This is Olaf Odinson by Sigrid Undset, the author of of Kristin Lavransdatter. This is a new translation. This is part two, translated by Tina Nunnally, who did a new translation of Kristin Lavransdatter that I really liked. And this is Providence. And I don't know if you can make it out, but that is a head wound. That's an eye right there. That is a traumatic head wound, as befits the subject matter here. This comes out, it's out already. It came out on October 5th. And this is the second volume in the Nobel Prize-winning writer's epic of medieval Norway, but not the epic for which Undset won the Nobel Prize, but rather from the same author. Let's see here. This is the first new English translation in nearly an entire century, and the first volume of this is Providence, and the first volume of this was very good. It was very involving. It actually left me wanting to know more. It left me wanting volume 2. This is from the University of Minnesota Press. Let's see here. As Norway moves into the 14th century, the kingdom continues to be racked by political turmoil and bloody family vendettas that serve as the backdrop for Sigrid Undset's masterful story about Olav Odinson and Ingunn Steinfinnsdatter, who have an extremely tempestuous love for each other. And that bit about political turmoil and bloody family vendettas will remind you of Sagalong. We read Viking literature every year. Betrothed as children and raised as foster siblings, the unbridled love of this couple for each other sets in motion a series of dire events, with a legacy of betrayal, murder, and disgrace that will echo for generations. In Providence, the second of 4 volumes, Olav settles in at his ancestral estate at Hestviken, soon brings Ingunn home as his wife. Both hope to put their troubles behind them as they start a new life together, but the crimes and shameful secrets of the past have a long reach and a tenacious hold. The consequences of sin, suspicion, and familial obligations may prove a greater threat to the pair's happiness than even their long years of separation. I couldn't be happier about this myself. So this is out already. I need to look around and see if I still have Volume 1. And if not, maybe see if the publicist will send me Volume 1. Volume 1 would be really nice. Then we have a second book here. This book is also the second book in the series. I believe it's going to be the final book in the series. And it's fascinating. The genesis of this thing is fascinating. This is by Gerald J. It's an Inspector Mazarel mystery, and it's called The Hangman's Corpse. And the pub sheet above the title of the book, this comes out, do I have a date? This comes out on December 7th, so early December of this year. And above the title on the pub sheet is the line, "A family comes together to finish their beloved patriarch's mystery novel." And I swear, when I first read that, before any pennies started to drop, I thought that's a very intriguing premise for a mystery. But that's actually the real-life story behind this book. The précis of the book comes elsewhere. That's the story of this book, not the story of the plot. This is a follow-up to Gerald J's celebrated debut of Inspector Paul Mazarel in The Paris Detective. I think we saw The Paris Detective on this channel. And I when I started reading, I vaguely started remembering that I maybe had read it. It was a kind of a fish out of water mystery. But this is the second book. I'll tell you a little bit about the plot and then a little bit about the book. A murdered man is discovered dangling inside the tunnels of a Paris canal. The only clue? A tarot card in his pocket, the Hanged Man. When an obviously innocent suspect is railroaded into prison for the homicide, Mazarel sets off to hunt for the real killer. For the charming, hot-tempered, impulsive Frenchman, now back from the provinces and leading his own homicide unit, it's an investigation that takes him far from the comforts of Beaujolais and Bouillabaisse and plunges him into the underworld of ruthless white supremacists looking for scapegoats in Paris's growing immigrant community, corrupt cops eager to cover up the shady side business, and a conspiracy that threatens his own life. And in the course of this story, he becomes a suspect. Events start. The forces behind the murder start to direct attention at him to get him off the case, and that's the story of the book. I'm going to have to contact the publicist and see if maybe a copy of Paris Detective can be shaken loose, because I'm sure I don't have it anymore. But I want to read you just a bit about that line. A family comes together to finish their beloved patriarch's mystery novel. There's a little bit of an interview here, and it starts off with the explanation. Gerald J is the pen name of Gerald J. Goldberg, the author of The Paris Detective, the first installment of the Inspector Mazarel series, as well as the Pulitzer Prize-nominated The Lynching of Orrin Neufeld, 3 other novels, and 2 works of nonfiction. Jerry Goldberg passed away in June 2nd, 2020. His second Mazarel novel, The Hangman's Tale, was completed by his wife, his son, his grandson. So the wife, the son, and the grandson all came together to write this book. I don't know what kind of a reading experience that's going to make. Much will probably depend on whether or not this book was heavily outlined, maybe even partially written by the author. No idea what the extent of that is, but the premise of the mystery itself sounds fascinating. It's just, I read that line and thought, well, gee, that would make a good book on its own. Maybe one of the family will write that book. Then we have a biography. This doesn't come out until February, so I don't have to worry about it right away, but I thought it should be on your radar in case you're interested. This is from the great folks at W.W. Norton. This is The Man from the Future, The Visionary Life of John von Neumann, by Ananyo Bhattacharya, The Man from the Future. Born in Budapest at the turn of the century, John von Neumann was one of the most influential scientists who have ever lived. And yet how many of you are learning his name for the first time? A child prodigy, he mastered calculus by the age of 8, and in high school made lasting contributions to mathematics. In Germany, where he helped lay the foundations of quantum mechanics, and later at Princeton, von Neumann's colleagues believed he had the fastest brain on the planet, bar none. Keep in mind who else was at Princeton at that time. That's a pretty high accolade. He was instrumental in the Manhattan Project and in the design of the atom bomb. He helped formulate the bedrock of Cold War geopolitics and modern economic theory. He created the first ever programmable digital computer. He prophesied the potential of nanotechnology, and from his deathbed he expounded on the limits of brains and computers and how they might be overcome. Did they save von Neumann's brain? I know this guy only as 2 or 3 items in an index of the biography of far more famous scientists. I'm going to learn a huge amount about it myself. And this book explores how a combination of genius and unique historical circumstance, hope you win, allowed a single man to sweep through a stunningly diverse array of fields, sparking revolutions wherever he went. Oh, I like that. Sparking revolutions wherever he went. That's neat. Okay, well, this doesn't come out until next year. I will, of course, be interested in a major biography at the time. I wonder how much press it will get. And then we've got a few hardcovers, and then we'll be done with this. Just new arrivals, just miscellaneous new arrivals that may interest you, that may not. This first one is by Brendan Borrell, and it is The First Shots, the epic rivalries and heroic science behind the race to the coronavirus vaccine. I think I have a sheet. Yeah, I have a sheet for this. What have I got here? This comes out in October. Yes? Yes? Okay, you want to shove that at me. There we go. Yes, this comes out in a week. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm all kerfluffed here. Okay. In The First Shots, currently under development for an HBO limited series with superstar director and producer Adam McKay, Borrell draws on his exclusive and high-level access to weave together an incredible story about the hard-driving scientists billionaire entrepreneurs, and chaotic political power players who shaped 18 pandemic months of fear, resolve, and triumph. Speaking with roughly 150 sources, including infectious disease expert Michael Callahan, and American doctors secretly on the ground in Wuhan in January of 2020 to gauge the terrifying ravages of Disease X, Dr. Bob Kadlec, one of Operation Warp Speed's architects, whose audacious plans for the American people run straight into the buzzsaw of the Trump White House factions, and delivering insider reveals on Stefan Bancel of upstart Moderna Therapeutics going toe-to-toe with pharma behemoth Pfizer. The first shot lays bare the full, stunning story behind the medical science moonshot of our lifetime. It's a subject that is ripe for, like I mentioned, I have to have the windows open. It's almost 90 degrees at the end of October in Boston, so I have to have the windows open, and that means egregious noise. But anyway, as I was saying before the backfire, this is an epic story. We all knew it. It's history. That's what I've been saying about the coronavirus pandemic all along. This is massive history book style history that we've all been living through, except for the millions that didn't. But all of us who are there, who are here now talking and listening, we lived through this event, and it's huge. It's not over, and it was huge. A gigantic event, something that will be in every history book. So that it's literally true that your grandchildren on your knee will be amazed to hear that you lived through this. They'll be studying it in school. And one of the most amazing parts of that story is that we went from zero to a vaccine in an unbelievably short amount of time. Multiple vaccines. With not only were they cobbled together and made workable in record amounts of time, but with gigantic efficacy. 90s percentile efficacy. That's amazing. And this is that story. It sounds like it's going to be done with a fair amount of HBO-ready dramatics and interpersonal dialogue and that sort of thing, which is fine by me if it works. So I'm looking forward to it. It's out very soon, so it also goes on the list. The problem with some of these things going on my TBR right away is that my mail today, the actual opening on-camera mail today, was really good. That makes it even harder to prioritize what's being read tonight. Anyway, this next one is a thriller. It's book 4 in a series, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I've read any of the books in the series, so I don't know how well it stands on its own. That is, of course, the author's job, right? Not mine, not yours. So we'll see. But in the meantime, I can at least show it to you. It's called Black Chain, not Blockchain, but Black Chain by Dominic Martel. And there you have an ornate old world doorway superimposed on binary code because this is going to deal with cryptocurrency. This comes out, or came out on October 5th, so this is out already. Those of you who are familiar with this chain, with this series, might not know there's a new one out. If you really are a fan, this is out. It's available. Whether your bookstore has it or not, they can certainly get it. This is the 4th installment of Dominic Martel's thrilling geopolitical series featuring an unusual protagonist, a repentant former terrorist from the 1980s Cold War era named Pasquale Rose. Full of anticipation and suspense, Black Chain begins when Pasquale agrees to help the U.S. government with an urgent international security crisis, but he quickly discovers there's a lot more to the job than originally advertised. And the first way he discovers that is that somebody knows his name, which is really bad in his line of work. Anyone who knows Pasquale's real name can only bring him trouble. So he knows the American who just found him in a cheap Marseille bistro is going to ruin more than just his lunch. The CIA needs another favor from him, but this time there's $1 million paycheck. All he has to do is deliver a ransom to some hacked government data. A simple job gets a lot more complicated when the hackers get hacked. Now Pasquale finds himself on the run with the cyber thief behind $100 million in gold-backed crypto, with a slew of enemies right behind them. From the opulent hotels of Monaco to a secret prison in war-torn Yemen, Pasquale has no one to trust, and time is running out. So a classic-style thriller that I am, since it's out already, I'm going to give it a try. I'll just wade into it. I'm not going to bother. If it was the second book in a series, like some of these things, then I might go hat in hand to the publicist and say, Since it's only the second book in the series, if you could get me a copy of Volume 1, that would be great. But if it's the fourth book in the series, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to trust that the author knows that he is going to encounter a lot of readers who have not read those earlier books. The longer the backlog is, the more likely it is that anyone seeing your book on a shelf won't have read all the others, and hence the greater importance of making this stand on its own. We shall see. Always up for a thriller, though. Then we have a murder mystery. This is also, I think, the fourth in a series, and the finishing. It's the finale of a series. This comes out on November 2nd. I don't know what all that noise is in the background. I'm just assuming, I'm hoping that this camera is blocking a lot of it out. It's unbelievable. And naturally, it wasn't like this at any point today. And I become increasingly, by osmosis, aware of it to the point where at the end of the video, I'm yelling. I'm yelling right now. Because I'm trying to compensate for the noise in the background, which is not going anywhere. Once upon a time, I could have expected it to go somewhere. That it would be mitigated not only by closed windows, but by the fact that the cold outside would make people less willing to just hang around making noise. But it's high summer, so it's not going anywhere. I'll just have to hope that I'm mostly coming through. This book is called The Attic on Queen Street by Karen White. And it's the last, that's a lovely cover, don't you think? And this is the last book in a series, the Trad Street series. This comes out on November 2nd. 13 years after the publication of The House on Trad Street, New York Times bestselling author Karen White's beloved series comes to a thrilling end with the seventh and final installment. Okay, so this isn't book 4, this is book 7. The Trad Street series, starring psychic medium Melanie Trenholm, a host of friendly and malevolent ghosts, and set in Charleston, South Carolina, has been a joy to read since it began. Fans will relish this last visit to Trad Street in White's much-awaited finale, released just in time for Halloween. So I don't know. I mean, like I mentioned with Dominic Martel, it's the writer's job to make the book stand on its own. And maybe it's certainly possible with book 2 in a series, and maybe it's possible with book 4. I don't think it's possible with book 7. So I'm not sure that I'm going to understand anything of this book. I'm certainly not going to get all of the fan service nuance, all of the what we call Easter eggs. I'm not going to get any of those. And I don't know how much of that will be this book. We shall see. But I wanted you to know about it, especially if you've already read the Trad Street books and were wondering when the next one's coming out. It's coming out soon. And then we'll finish up with a debut, so we don't have to worry about previous books. And it's a murder mystery, and it's a historical murder mystery, so it's right up Steve's alley already. This is The Bloodless Boy by Robert Lloyd. And there is London in the background there. This is set in Restoration London, and it comes out on the 2nd of November. And this is the author's debut. Based on a legendary real-life unsolved murder, this book is part Wolf Hall, part Name of the Rose, and part The Alienist. But with a flavor all its own. It is a riveting new literary thriller set in Restoration London with a cast of real historic figures set against the actual historic events and intrigues of a returned king and his court. The City of London, 1678. New Year's Day. 12 years have passed since the Great Fire ripped through the city. The body of a young boy, drained of his blood and with a sequence of numbers inscribed on his skin, is discovered on the snowy bank of Fleet River. Sir Edmund Bury Godfrey, the powerful Justice of the Peace for Westminster, is certain of Catholic guilt in the crime. He enlists Robert Hooke, the curator of experiments of the Royal Society, and his assistant Harry Hunt to help with the inquiry. And some of you, maybe you historical murder mystery fans, will be nodding a little, because Earl Stanley Gardner, it was John Dixon Carr, wrote a terrific historical murder mystery called The Murder of Edmund Bury Godfrey, that I don't think is in print anymore. I don't think The Murder of Edmund Bury Godfrey has been in print forever. It's really, it is a real story. Edmund Bury Godfrey was later killed himself under extremely mysterious circumstances. I don't know if he's going to die in this book. Robert Hooke certainly is not. That same morning, Henry Oldenburg, the Secretary of the Royal Society, blows his brains out. A disgraced earl is released from the Tower of London, bent on revenge against King Charles II. It is absorbing and introduces 2 new indelible heroes to historical crime fiction. It is also, I don't know who those 2 are. I'm assuming it's Hooke and his assistant. It is also a powerfully atmospheric recreation of the darkest corners of Restoration London, where the court and the underworld seem to merge, even as the light of scientific inquiry is starting to emerge. Right up Steve's alley. Right up Steve's alley. And the author is the son of parents who worked in the British Foreign Office. He grew up in South London, Innsbruck, and Kinshasa. He studied for a fine arts degree, starting as a landscape painter, but it was while studying for his MA degree in the history of ideas that he first read Robert Hooke's diary, detailing the life and experiments of the extraordinary man. And we saw recently, I just got a biography of Robert Hooke that I'm clearly going to be going back to when it comes to this book. After a 20-year career as a secondary school teacher, he has now returned to painting and writing. The Bloodless Boy is his debut novel, and he is at work on a sequel. Fantastic. Just fantastic. So if you are out there and you are looking for a new historical murder series, and maybe you really love the Restoration period, or maybe you're looking to switch up a period, and you've never read anything set in the Restoration period, get on the ground floor with this thing. It's going to be out in just a couple of weeks. So those are some new releases for you, plus a massive, monstrous amount of noise. Just a monstrous amount of noise. Nothing I can do about that. So we have The Bloodless Boy, the author's debut. We have The Attic on Queen Street, the 7th and final book in the Trad Street Murder Mystery series. We have Black Chain by Dominic Martel, the 4th adventure of his ex-terrorist protagonist. We have The First Shots by Brian Borrell, his nonfiction debut about the truly, it is not hyperbole to say, the truly historic race for the coronavirus vaccine. We have The Man from the Future, a new biography of John von Neumann. As far as I know, the first biography of him in quite some time, and maybe the only full-length one in English. Am I right about that? I'll have to check. I'll have to check and see. I know a lot of his milieu really well. I've read many biographies of Robert Oppenheimer. I've read many biographies of Einstein, of course, and Niels Bohr, and also Max Planck. And also Enrico Fermi. There was a recent book just a few years ago called The Last Man Who Knew Everything. There was a biography of Enrico Fermi that I really liked. This feels like a missing tile in that mosaic. Then we have The Hangman's Tale by Gerald J. But really, it's by Gerald J. and most of his extended family, all chipping in with participle here or pronoun there. And finally, Providence, the second book in the Olav Oddsson tetralogy by Sigrid Undset, in a new translation by a really good translator. A translator who really gets this author. So there you go. Some new releases for your consideration, as the Academy Awards say, just in case you're interested, so that you'll know they're there. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.